Hello everyone, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink, and this two cards, was technically for last week's Color Throwdown Challenge. There's going to be a new challenge up tomorrow. I'm behind as usual, got a cold, it was Thanksgiving weekend for us Canadians, etc. So, while the turkey was cooking, I wanted to play around a little bit. I've had the stamp set sitting on my desk, I had everything like ready to go. So I have some YUPO paper here, and this is just the 5x7 white sheet of YUPO paper. If you're not familiar with YUPO, it's basically plastic. It's not actually paper. And it's awesome because it's non-porous and it allows alcohol inks to move on it. I've done a bunch of videos on alcohol inks and the lift ink. I'll have links at the end of this video if you haven't seen them. So I'd started with the alcohol blending solution, and I'd kind of just lightly dropped a bit of that onto the surface. And then I dropped some of these alcohol inks, and I have Botanical, LIMEADE, and DENIM. And I first tried moving them around. I have the little alcohol ink brush kit, and I was using the brush. Didn't like that. I was like, no. So then I was kind of like moving it around, and then I'm just going back and forth. I'm adding some of the blending solution. I add some more alcohol ink. I even add a little bit of rubbing alcohol. Again, disclaimer, always make sure you're working in a very well ventilated area with these, because these are alcohol inks. Like there is, little fumes and whatnot. I've never had a problem. I actually find like just basic rubbing alcohol is a lot stronger, like smell wise, but always well ventilated. I always make sure I've got, good ventilation going on. So this is where I like splattered on a bit of the just rubbing alcohol. You don't really want to splatter or spray the alcohol blending solution. Just again, another disclaimer, because it has resins in it and the resins are extremely flammable and it will stick to surfaces. So I splattered a bit of the just rubbing alcohol, and I let it dry because I kept working with it because I always am like this when I'm making any sort of alcohol ink background. I don't care for it, but then once it dries, it's like, oh, this is nice. I like this. So I cleaned off my glass. I'm working on the glass, the Tim Holtz Tonic glass mat, and I cleaned that off just with hand sanitizer because there's alcohol in that, and it cleans everything up like a dream. That little ceramic dish, people always ask me where I got those. It's actually like a condiment dish. I have a few of them. I had a serving set from years ago, and I don't entertain. I never have anyone over. I'm a hermit. So I kept the little ceramic dishes I keep them on my desk, and I use them, and then I gave away the other dishes in the set. Because the little ones are perfect. So that's what those are. Any sort of like non-porous little glass or ceramic dish would work perfectly when you're, using any sort of like alcohol type ink, etc. And I just like using it for, a little bit of rubbing alcohol when I'm cleaning off my brushes or doing any of those little effects. So I've got the background. Like I said, it's dried. I have it in my stamp platform. And then I'm inking up this great big flower cluster image from the Simon Says Stamp sketched flower set. I showed this in my haul video over the weekend. And I inked that up with the alcohol lift ink. And then the second piece of paper here is not YUPO paper. This is just Neenah Classic Crest 80-pound white cardstock. So a porous, normal cardstock. Because after you use the lift ink on the background, it pulls up all of that color. And then you can immediately stamp it onto a porous surface like cardstock. And again, I'll have a link. I did a big video a while ago showing this multiple times. And then after I've stamped that onto the white cardstock, I immediately clean my stamp. I use just Simon's stamp cleaner. It will stain no matter what. These alcohol, like once you're getting that stuff onto like polymer stamps, they're going to stain. It doesn't bother me, but I just like to make sure to clean off any excess residue. And then this alcohol ink background, it had sat while I stamped the other image, and it sat while I cleaned off my stamp. So gave it a couple minutes, and then I just dabbed it first with the paper towel, and then you buff it. And that's what really makes that image just kind of pop off the background. It's kind of like the magic happening. That's the one thing I'm figuring out more and more, is just giving it that enough time to kind of sit. Because if you dab at it and buff it while it's too wet, you start smearing around that lift ink and you end up with a mess. Trust me, been there. So letting it sit while I stamp the next image and clean off my stamp seems to be like the perfect amount of time, for me anyway. So both of these backgrounds, the white cardstock and the alcohol ink background, I die cut with the largest of the Simon basic rectangle dies. And I also die cut it with the frame from the Simon frames set that I'm like always obsessed with. So I die cut both of them with that. And then for the white cardstock, I stamped the sentiment directly onto it with some Simon black intense black ink because there's like all these awesome sentiments in this set. And then I'm going to adhere these directly to my card bases because the largest Simon rectangle die is A2 sized. So for both, I'm going to adhere the frame first, or like the outer frame. The inner frame, I also die cut from some Simon Blue Glitter cardstock. So I removed the little frame of the white piece, and I'm going to remove the frame of the alcohol ink piece, and I'm going to inlay this blue glitter one instead, just to kind of pull out more of the blue. So I used my Tonic Nouveau adhesive. I adhered that outer frame. Now I'm going to adhere this little inner die cut frame, just kind of butt it up against the edges here. And then I can finally inlay the centerpiece, and everything's like flat, and yet it's got, you know, that glitter. It's fabulous. Everything lines up. So nice when that happens. So do the exact same thing with this alcohol ink piece. And obviously the inner portions of that glitter paper, I put right back in the package to save for later. Because glitter paper, that is one of the things I'm much more conservative about because you don't get very much of that. So I just do the exact same thing, line everything up, adhere the outer portion first to my card bases, which are just heavyweight white cardstock, cut to 4 1/4 by 11, scored at 5 1/2, so top folding A2 size card. So once I have the outer portion, again, using the adhesive, it's hard to see on camera, but I'm not squeezing very hard. You don't want so much adhesive that's going to start like oozing up in between these little frame pieces. Very small amounts, that's all that's needed. So I just go around, adhere the glitter cardstock. That one takes a little fiddling because it's such a narrow little frame, which I love. But it takes a little bit of fiddling, you know, get everything in place, inlay the centerpiece, and then I've got both of these all adhered. So for the alcohol inked piece, I didn't want to stamp a sentiment directly onto it, and I didn't want to heat emboss. You can kind of heat emboss on YUPO paper. It's finicky. I honestly haven't tried it because it can actually warp and melt really quickly. I know Jennifer McGuire has heat embossed on it without any issues. Again, it's something I want to play with before actually like stamping a finished card. Just again, to figure out that sweet spot of like how to make it work. So rather than mess that up, I stamped the sentiment onto some white cardstock, and I messed up the first one, so I just flipped it over and stamped on the other side. So I stamped the sentiment with Blueprint Sketch Distress Oxide ink, die cut it with one of the sentiment banners dies, and then I used one of these little dies that come in that same set to cut like at an angle. And it's really sad to say that I've had this die set for a month now, and I just fully discovered what those were. I thought they were like a notch you'd cut in your card, and it totally didn't occur to me that you use that. You can cut little flag ends on your sentiment strips. That's what it's for. I don't pay enough attention, I don't think. So I use that to cut a nice perfect angle, you know, on this sentiment strip, and then I'm going to adhere this to my card front. Again, with the Nouveau adhesive, and always have to remind myself when I'm adhering anything to YUPO paper, it takes a little longer to dry because again, it's plastic. It's not cardstock, so the adhesives take longer to dry because they're not soaking into it like they do with normal cardstock. So I did that, and then for both of the insides of these cards, I'm just gonna line up this stamp again, and like I said, you can see how stained it is. That's just what using the lift ink and the alcohol inks do. Staining doesn't bother me. I know it bothers some people, but a stain stamp to me is just a loved stamp. I don't have a problem with it at all. Some of my stamps are so incredibly stained, and as long as they're clean, because you know, if I'm inking up with a lighter ink, I don't care. So I'm inking up these stamps with Twisted Citron Distress Oxide ink this time, and stamping those kind of off to the side on the inside of both of these cards. And once this is stamped onto both cards, I'm going to stamp a couple more sentiments from this sketch flower set because I really love these sentiments. I really like this font. I think it's so pretty. So with both cards, I'm lining up a different sentiment from the set. So for the thanks card, it's saying sending hugs on the inside. And I'm just inking that up with Simon's Intense Black ink again, just stamping it multiple times because these are brand new stamps, and especially with black ink, usually takes a few, you know, inkings and whatnot to really get the stamps like conditioned. And then for the hello card, it says thinking of you on the inside. And I couldn't resist adding some bling, of course. So I pulled out 3 sets of Studio Caudia, the monthly crystal collections, because the colors were perfect. I have August is the really, really like bright, almost neon green. The May crystals are the like deeper Kelly sort of a green. And then the September crystals are the most gorgeous blue. Love. So I was heavy-handed with these. I wanted to put them on everything. So I sprinkled a whole bunch of them onto both of these card fronts. And then once I was happy with how many I had, I'm going to adhere all these into place with that same Nouveau glue, just picking everything up with my jewel picker and then adhering them down. And once I've got that adhered, that's going to finish off these cards. So like I'd mentioned earlier in the video, this color challenge is already over. You can always use it though. It's like I've always said, I always enjoy the color challenges because it just makes me think of colors and color combinations that I don't normally think of. But there will be a new one this week. There will also be a huge Simon Says stamp release first thing tomorrow morning. So stay tuned. I will have videos. There's going to be a blog hub this week. You know, all the fun stuff. It's going to be super fun. So there will be more videos from me. I'm dealing with this rotten cold right now as usual. And still plugging away, powering through it. I'll have a link below the video to my blog post. I'll have links to all of the supplies used. So you can check all that out in the description box below if you are interested. Thank you all so much for watching and subscribing and thumbs upping and commenting on my videos. I really appreciate it. I will see you all very soon in the next video. Bye!